I met Elena on a rainy Thursday afternoon in the lobby of the city courthouse. It wasn't romantic in the usual sense. There were no violins, no slow motion, but it felt like destiny. I had just finished signing a stack of papers for a property I'd inherited from my grandfather, while she was waiting for a friend. I was fumbling with a broken umbrella when she offered me hers, flashing a smile that somehow warmed me more than any jacket could. She was charming, smart, effortlessly beautiful. The kind of woman who could talk about psychology and classic films in the same breath. We clicked instantly. What started as casual conversation over coffee turned into dinners, weekend getaways, long late-night calls that lasted until dawn. I was 35 at the time. I had spent most of my adult life focused on work, an architect by trade, with little time for romance. But with Elena, everything slowed down. She made me want to invest in life again. In love. In something real. Elena came from a modest background. She worked in interior design and had dreams of opening her own studio. I admired her drive and creativity. She seemed supportive, kind, and genuinely interested in my passions. She laughed at my dry humor. She loved my dog, Cooper. She even got along with my mother, which felt like a miracle on its own. 6 months after we met, I proposed. I didn't overthink it. I didn't need to. It felt right. We had a small ceremony by the lake. Just close friends, family, and a soft wind that made it all feel like a dream. Everyone said we were the perfect couple, two puzzle pieces that had somehow found each other in a world of noise and distraction. The first few months of marriage were exactly what I thought married life should be. Dinners together, planning the future, dreaming of a bigger house and a child. We talked about having kids almost every night. I told her I was ready. I'd worked hard, I was financially stable, and I wanted to be a dad. She smiled every time, her eyes lighting up like it was the only thing she wanted too. Looking back now, I realize that was exactly what she wanted me to believe. At the time, I thought I had finally found peace, someone to share my life with, someone who loved me without agenda. But I was wrong. Very wrong. 3 months into our marriage, life felt perfect. I would wake up every morning, roll over, and see Elena lying next to me, her hair scattered across the pillow, a peaceful smile on her face. I thought to myself, this is what happiness must feel like. We had fallen into a comfortable routine, work, dinners, weekend walks with Cooper, late-night talks about the future. One night, while we were sitting on the back porch watching the stars, Elena turned to me with a sparkle in her eyes. She took my hand and placed it gently on her stomach. I think we need to buy a bigger house, she whispered, almost teasingly. I blinked, not fully understanding. What do you mean? I asked, smiling. She bit her lower lip and leaned closer. I'm pregnant, she said softly. For a moment, I couldn't move. My brain tried to catch up with my heart, which had already leaped into the sky. Pregnant. My wife was pregnant. I laughed, a full, loud, surprised laugh, and scooped her up into my arms, spinning her around like something out of a cheesy movie. She laughed too, that musical laugh of hers that always made my chest ache with happiness. I remember feeling tears sting my eyes. Me, a man who prided himself on being logical, steady, composed. I was crying on the back porch because the woman I loved had just told me we were about to start a family. That night, we stayed up for hours making plans. She wanted a nursery painted soft yellow, not knowing yet if it was a boy or a girl. She wanted a mobile with little airplanes, like the one she had as a child. We discussed names, Emma if it was a girl, Noah if it was a boy. I told her I didn't care about the gender. I just wanted a healthy baby and a happy wife. The next day, we celebrated with our families. Elena insisted we keep it quiet until the first trimester was over, but she allowed us to tell my mother and her parents. Watching my mother's face light up when she heard the news is still a memory I cherish, even though it's now soaked in betrayal. Elena acted exactly like any expectant mother would. She started wearing loose dresses. She talked about cravings, pickles and peanut butter, of all things. She showed me blurry ultrasound pictures she said she got from an early appointment. She talked about feeling the baby kick at night. She even bought prenatal vitamins and left them visibly on the bathroom counter. Every time she placed my hand on her stomach and smiled, I felt like the luckiest man in the world. I started making changes too. I began working fewer overtime hours. I contacted a real estate agent about upgrading our home. I even took out a life insurance policy, one that named Elena and our future child as beneficiaries. It seemed like the responsible thing to do. After all, I had an inheritance from my grandfather. I wanted to protect my family, to build a strong foundation. At night, we would lie in bed, her head resting against my chest, and dream about the life ahead. She would draw circles on my hand with her fingers and whisper about teaching our child to ride a bike, first days of school, graduation ceremonies. It was everything I had ever wanted. And yet, somewhere deep inside me, a tiny whisper of doubt started to grow. Not enough to take seriously. Not enough to break the magic. But enough to make me notice little things. Like the fact that she never seemed to show much physically, even as the months passed. Or that she always found an excuse to attend her doctor appointments alone. Or how defensive she became if I casually asked to come along. I told myself it was normal. Some women carried small. Some women preferred privacy. She probably just felt overwhelmed. I didn't want to be the controlling husband. I wanted to be supportive, trusting. But still, the whisper grew louder. I remember one particular night, around what should have been the 7th month. Elena was standing in front of the mirror, admiring herself in a new maternity dress. She turned sideways, stroking her stomach. But the curve wasn't right. It looked padded, strange. She caught me looking and gave me a sharp, almost angry smile. "You don't think I'm getting too fat, do you?" she asked, her voice light but tight underneath. I shook my head quickly. No, not at all. You look beautiful." She smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I found myself lying awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling that knot of uncertainty tighten in my chest. Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe I just needed to trust the woman I loved. After all, love is built on trust, right? I had no idea at the time that Elena's entire pregnancy, every craving, every kick, every ultrasound photo, was nothing but a carefully crafted lie. A performance designed to lull me into a sense of security. To make me lower my guard. To set the stage for the real goal she had in mind, taking everything I had worked for. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. Stress, maybe. After all, preparing to be a first-time parent was overwhelming. I told myself a million times that I was just being paranoid, that Elena loved me, that she would never lie to me about something so sacred. But the doubts didn't go away. They grew, quiet and persistent, like weeds pushing through cracks in a sidewalk. It started with the doctor's appointments. Every time I asked to come with her, she had an excuse. "Oh, it's just a checkup, nothing special. The waiting rooms are crowded, you'd hate it. You're so busy with work, love. Save your time for when the baby's born." At first, these explanations made sense. I didn't want to be the clingy, overbearing husband. I wanted to respect her independence. But after 4 or 5 missed appointments, it started to gnaw at me. Other guys at work bragged about hearing their baby's heartbeat, seeing the first ultrasound. Meanwhile, I was stuck watching from the sidelines, piecing together second-hand information that never quite fit. One evening, I decided to surprise her. She had a doctor's appointment scheduled for 3 p.m., and I arranged to get off work early. I drove to the clinic and waited in the parking lot, watching the front doors. Patients went in and out. I waited and waited. At 3:45 p.m., I saw her car pull into the lot. I ducked down, heart pounding like I was the one hiding something. She stepped out, glanced around nervously, and then sat in her car, pretending to fiddle with her phone. 10 minutes later, she drove away, without ever setting foot inside the building. My stomach twisted into a knot so tight I could barely breathe. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't say a word. Instead, I smiled, made dinner, asked her how the appointment had gone. She lied straight to my face. "Oh, everything's perfect," she said. "The doctor said the baby's growing strong. We might be able to schedule a 3D ultrasound soon." She even pulled out a blurry photo, something that looked vaguely like a fetus, printed on glossy paper. I nodded and kissed her forehead, trying to hide the churning fury inside me. I needed proof. Not just suspicion. Not just a gut feeling. Because love, real love, deserves certainty before you accuse someone of betrayal. A few weeks later, the inconsistencies became harder to ignore. One night, while Elena was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I respected her privacy. But something compelled me to glance at the screen. It was a message from a name I didn't recognize, Dr. Simone M. The message simply read, "You owe the second half of the payment. We can't provide another fake sonogram without it." My hands went cold. Fake sonogram. It felt like the ground under my feet had cracked open, and I was free-falling into darkness. I scrolled quickly. There were other messages. Conversations about staged photos, about maintaining appearances, about keeping him in the dark just a little longer. It was worse than I had feared. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. This was a conspiracy. Still, I needed to be sure. I needed undeniable, irrefutable evidence before I did anything. That night, while she slept, I carefully placed a small recording device under the seat of her car. A friend of mine who worked in private security had given it to me once, joking that every husband should have one, just in case. I had laughed then. I wasn't laughing now. Over the next week, I listened. What I heard shattered every illusion I had ever held. Phone calls to a woman named Tara, apparently the mastermind behind this plan. Elena laughed about how easy it was. "How stupid he is," she said once, her voice dripping with disdain. "He just believes everything. I barely have to try." They discussed timelines. Money. How much longer they needed to keep up the act before they could finalize the papers and access the accounts. I learned the full scope of the betrayal. Elena's plan was simple but brutal. Fake a pregnancy. Convince me to amend my will and estate plans to include the unborn child. Then, at the right time, claim a miscarriage or some other tragedy. And walk away with half of everything. The inheritance from my grandfather. The house we were planning to buy. The savings account I had built from scratch. Everything. And all the while, she smiled at me across the dinner table. Called me, baby. Held my hand. Made love to me, under the pretense of building a future. I wanted to confront her right then, to scream, to demand answers. But I knew that anger would only tip her off. I had to be smarter. I had to be colder. If she could lie to my face for 9 months, then I could pretend for a little while longer. Because if she thought she had me trapped, she was wrong. I had a plan now. And this time, it would be her who wouldn't see it coming. Every day after I discovered the truth felt like walking through fire. Pretending was harder than I ever imagined. Each morning, I kissed Elena goodbye before she left for her prenatal yoga class. Each evening, I asked about the baby's kicks and nursery colors, with a smile that felt like broken glass in my mouth. She acted as if everything was perfect. She believed she had me completely fooled. And that's exactly what I wanted. I spent those weeks carefully constructing a silent trap, an invisible net that she wouldn't even realize existed until it was too late. The first step was contacting my lawyer. Not the firm Elena knew about, the one handling the simple things like house contracts and insurance. No, I went straight to the lawyer my grandfather had trusted with his estate, a man named Mr. Holloway. Discreet, brilliant, loyal. I didn't tell him everything, yet. I simply explained that I needed to update my will urgently. He didn't ask questions. Within 2 days, the paperwork was ready. In it, I removed any mention of future children until a legitimate birth certificate could be produced. I also added clauses that froze large transfers from my accounts under any suspicious circumstances. Elena, thinking she had won, would never know that the moment she tried to move money, everything would lock down instantly. Step 2 was gathering more evidence. I hired a private investigator, someone highly recommended by a colleague who had gone through a messy divorce. Discreet surveillance was placed on Elena. Every meeting with Dr. Simone. Every whispered conversation with Tara. Every bank transaction she made to pay for fake documents. Every lie was catalogued, photographed, and time-stamped. I even instructed the investigator to follow her during her supposed prenatal appointments. Of course, she never set foot in a real doctor's office. Instead, she spent afternoons shopping, meeting Tara in shady diners, or lounging in spas under a false name. Step 3, the hardest step, was pretending to be the doting husband. I organized a baby shower. I ordered flowers. I bought a brand new SUV, claiming it was safer for the baby. Every gift, every word of affection I gave her was another thread tightening around her wrists. Another weight pulling her closer to the moment of her downfall. Deep inside, anger simmered. Not just at Elena, but at myself, for believing so blindly, for loving so recklessly. But rage was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not yet. I had to play the long game. Every night, I lay beside her in bed, listening to her soft, fake breathing, thinking about the woman I thought I had married. And every night, I promised myself, you will not act until every piece is in place. You will not confront her until you can destroy every lie with undeniable proof. And so I waited. Patient. Silent. Deadly. It happened on a Thursday morning. The sun was barely rising when Elena stood in the kitchen, sipping her coffee with a strange look in her eyes. She was nervous. I could tell. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it by clutching the mug tighter. I acted like I didn't notice. We chatted about small things, weekend plans, nursery decorations, a pediatrician meeting she had scheduled for next week. It was all meaningless noise. I played along, smiling, nodding, pretending to be the oblivious husband she had always assumed I was. Then, after breakfast, she dropped the first bait. I've been thinking, she said carefully, maybe we should move your inheritance money into a joint account, you know, for the baby. It'll make things easier. She said it so sweetly, so casually, as if moving $500,000 was as simple as rearranging furniture. I raised my eyebrows, pretending to be surprised. But we already have a savings account, I said lightly. Isn't that enough? Her eyes hardened just for a second, barely noticeable unless you were looking. Then she smiled, masking it. I just think it would be safer. For the family. For our future. Family. Future. Words she wielded like knives cloaked in silk. I nodded slowly. You're right. I'll call the bank this afternoon. The flash of triumph in her eyes almost made me sick. But I kept smiling. Later that day, she conveniently went to run errands, giving me the time and space to act. I didn't call the bank. Instead, I met with Mr. Holloway. We finalized the last steps of the trap. New documents were signed. Powers of attorney updated. Emergency alerts set on every account. The moment anyone, even Elena, attempted a transfer beyond a certain limit, I would be notified instantly. That night, I told her everything was arranged. I even showed her a forged confirmation email I had prepared with the help of my lawyer, a fake that looked official enough to reassure her that the money was now easily accessible. Elena's excitement was palpable. She practically skipped around the house, humming to herself, already dreaming about what she would buy. It was only a matter of time now. Sure enough, 2 days later, while pretending to be at her prenatal yoga class, she made her move. Using online banking, she attempted to wire $450,000 into a secret account she had opened under her maiden name. Within seconds, my phone buzzed. Alert. Suspicious transfer attempt detected. Account frozen. I smiled to myself. The trap had sprung. And Elena had no idea yet. When she came home that night, she acted normal. She kissed me on the cheek, talked about how the baby had hiccups, laughed about some funny moment at class. She was good. Very good. But not good enough. Later that evening, I received another call from the investigator. He had captured video evidence, Elena at the bank, arguing angrily with a teller after the transfer failed. She had demanded explanations. The teller, calm but firm, told her that all transactions from that account now required both spouses' signatures and a court-verified reason. Her plan was crumbling, and she didn't even know yet how much worse it was going to get. I tucked the investigator's reports into a folder. Soon, it would be time to confront her. But not just in private. No. After everything she had done, the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, I wanted the truth exposed publicly. I wanted the world to see the real Elena. And most of all, I wanted her to feel the same helplessness, the same humiliation, that she had so carefully crafted for me. Her reckoning was coming. And there would be no escape. The perfect opportunity came sooner than I expected. Elena's parents were hosting a small gathering at their house, a casual celebration for the soon-to-arrive grandchild. They invited a few close friends, family members, and, of course, me. Elena was glowing that day, basking in all the attention. She wore a flowing white maternity dress, cradling her stomach with delicate, rehearsed gestures. People congratulated her, patted her on the back, asked about due dates and baby names. She answered everything flawlessly, painting the picture of a joyful, expectant mother. If I hadn't known the truth, even I might have been fooled. But behind my polite smile, I was burning with anticipation. Today wasn't just a celebration. Today was the day everything would collapse. I had spent the last week preparing the final piece of evidence. Using the investigator's help, I had secured a discreet prenatal DNA test, a process that could determine paternity without risking the baby, or, in this case, proving the baby never existed. Elena had unknowingly provided the necessary material. A routine blood test she thought was ordered by her obstetrician. In reality, it had been collected for independent analysis. The results had arrived that morning. And they were devastating. No pregnancy. No fetus. Nothing. Elena was not pregnant. She never had been. It was all a lie. As the party continued, I waited for the perfect moment. When everyone was gathered around the living room, when all eyes were on her, celebrating the miracle, I stepped forward. I cleared my throat, holding a large manila envelope in my hands. "I have a little surprise," I said warmly. "A special gift for Elena." She beamed at me, radiating fake happiness. I walked toward her slowly. The room fell silent, everyone watching, expecting some touching gesture, a framed ultrasound maybe, or a heartfelt speech. Instead, I opened the envelope and pulled out the printed DNA results. "This," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "is the proof that there is no baby." A gasp echoed across the room. Elena's face went pale instantly, her smile collapsing into a confused frown. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, clutching her stomach instinctively. I held up the report. Independent laboratory analysis. Verified by 2 doctors. No signs of pregnancy. No fetus. Nothing. The room buzzed with murmurs and sharp, cutting whispers. I continued, my voice steady. "I hired a private investigator. I have recordings, bank statements, messages, all proving that Elena faked this entire pregnancy to steal my inheritance." Elena shook her head violently. "He's lying," she shrieked. "He's crazy. Don't listen to him." But her voice cracked with panic. The fear in her eyes betrayed her. One of her cousins, a nurse, stepped forward and asked coldly, "Can we see the documents?" I handed them over. One by one, people read. And one by one, their expressions shifted from disbelief to horror. The evidence was irrefutable, scientific, final. Elena burst into tears, collapsing onto the floor, sobbing hysterically, pleading, screaming, begging. But it didn't matter anymore. Her web of lies had unraveled completely, in front of everyone she cared about. Her parents looked away in shame. Her friends whispered and backed away slowly. No one rushed to comfort her. No one defended her. She was alone, exactly as she had planned for me to be. I didn't gloat. I didn't scream. I simply stood there, silent and calm, watching her world fall apart, piece by fraudulent piece. Because in the end, Elena had taught me something valuable. The best revenge is the truth. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Within days, I filed for divorce, citing fraud, emotional distress, and attempted financial theft. My lawyer moved quickly, presenting all the evidence we had meticulously gathered: the fake sonograms, the recorded conversations, the wire transfer attempt, the DNA test results. There was no room for doubt. Elena tried to fight it at first. She hired a high-priced attorney, swearing she would destroy me in court. She spun wild stories about how I had pressured her into faking a pregnancy out of fear of abandonment. She claimed she was the real victim, that I had driven her to desperation. But lies crumble quickly when faced with cold, hard facts. At the first court hearing, her entire narrative collapsed. The judge listened patiently as both sides presented their cases. My lawyer calmly laid out the timeline of deception, playing the recordings for the court to hear. The audio of Elena laughing about how easy it was to trick me filled the silent room. I watched her squirm in her seat, face flushed, hands trembling. She couldn't even meet my eyes. Then came the financial records, the secret bank account, the false doctor's invoices, the payments to her accomplice, Tara. Piece by piece, every part of her scheme was exposed like an open wound. Elena's lawyer tried to object, to shift blame, to plead for mercy. But the judge was unimpressed. In the end, the court's ruling was swift and merciless. The marriage was immediately annulled based on fraud. Elena was ordered to repay all funds she had misappropriated, including the costs of the fake documents and all legal fees. She faced separate charges of attempted fraud and conspiracy, opening her to potential jail time. She was left penniless, without alimony, without property, without sympathy. Watching her stand there, broken and humiliated in front of the entire courtroom, was a strange experience. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel vindictive pleasure. I felt closure. An overwhelming sense of peace, like a deep wound finally stitched shut. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, sensing a juicy scandal. I said nothing to them. No interviews. No statements. Elena, however, wasn't so lucky. Photos of her tear-streaked face made the rounds online, attached to headlines like, "Wife fakes pregnancy to steal husband's fortune, caught red-handed." From loving bride to con artist, the fall of Elena M. Her reputation was destroyed. Her friendships evaporated overnight. Even her own family, ashamed and humiliated, distanced themselves from her. She became a ghost in the very town where she once prided herself on being admired. In a final, desperate attempt months later, she sent me a handwritten letter. Pages and pages of apologies, denials, excuses, self-pity. I never opened it. I dropped it straight into the trash without a second thought. Because Elena had made her choice the moment she decided to fake a child for money. She chose lies over love. Greed over honesty. Manipulation over partnership. And now, she had to live with the consequences. I, meanwhile, was free. Scarred, yes. But wiser. Stronger. And finally ready to rebuild my life on a foundation of truth, not illusions. In the months that followed, my life felt strangely quiet. There were no more whispered lies behind closed doors. No more fake doctor's appointments. No more pretending. At first, the silence was unsettling. I would wake up in the middle of the night, half expecting to hear Elena's voice beside me, whispering about baby names or cravings. The memories were sharp, almost cruel in their vividness. But with each passing day, the echoes faded. I started rebuilding my life piece by piece. Not rushing. Not forcing anything. Just breathing again. I focused on my work, the projects I had once loved but had neglected during the whirlwind of my so-called marriage. I spent more time with Cooper, taking long walks without worrying about being home at a certain hour. I reconnected with old friends, people I had drifted away from while I was trapped in Elena's carefully crafted illusion. Most importantly, I reconnected with myself. The man I had been before the lies. The man who believed in honesty, loyalty, and love, not the fragile imitations Elena had offered. I learned to forgive myself. It wasn't easy. At times, the guilt gnawed at me. How could I have been so blind? So naive? But the truth is, trusting someone isn't a weakness. It's a risk we all take when we love deeply. And just because someone abuses that trust doesn't mean the love we offered was wrong. It just means they were never worthy of it. One evening, about a year after the divorce was finalized, I sat on the same porch where Elena had first told me she was pregnant. I watched the sunset bleed across the sky, soft and golden, and realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Elena. Not at myself. Not even at the world. She had taken so much from me. Time, trust, dreams. But she hadn't taken my ability to heal, to learn, to grow. And in a strange way, her betrayal had taught me lessons I would carry for the rest of my life. Always listen to your instincts. Never ignore the small inconsistencies. Love yourself enough to walk away from people who treat your trust like a game. I didn't need revenge beyond what had already happened. The truth had exposed everything. Justice had been served. And I had survived. Better yet, I had thrived. Looking out over the fading light, I smiled, not the broken, bitter smile of a man wounded, but the peaceful smile of someone who knows that no matter how deep the betrayal, healing is possible. And next time, because there will always be a next time, I would be wiser, stronger, ready, because betrayal can break your heart, but it can also rebuild your soul.